Hello everyone and welcome to my Inktober wrap-up. Sorry it took me so long to make this video. At the end of October I went on holiday and when I came back I really wanted to do this, but I wasn't sure how. Filming and editing always takes up a lot of time, so I decided to go the easy route and do a slideshow of all the images I did and tell you a little more about them. At the end of the video, I will also tell you a little more about my future plans. So here we go. The first word was swift, and I didn't know what it was, so after googling it, I discovered it was a bird, and since I wanted a little character in there, I decided to have my character go bird watching. Even though this is the first image, it was a total eye-opener for me because I didn't really know that I was capable of telling a story with my art, and in this first image I discovered that I could, and it sort of set a tone for every other image in this series. The second word was divided, and whenever I struggle with a prompt I always think of what it means to me, and whenever I feel divided is when a choice needs to be made. So I had my Mr. Pumpkinhead choose between Pumpkin Patch or Pumpkin Fest. Poison was probably the easiest one to come up with. This is an image that just popped up in my head. Drawing it, on the other hand, was a little more difficult. Underwater is, I believe, the one I struggled with the most. I didn't really know what to come up with, but I'm still happy I got some story into the image, with the fish that, blows up and then the other fish laughing at him. So yeah, even though it's not one of my favorites, I'm still happy with what I've achieved. The prompt long is something that can be interpreted in so many ways, but my initial idea was to create a story of all the Inktober pieces, and for this one I decided to show you what decision he made, and he's going to Pumpkin Fest and you can see the long road ahead of him. The next one was sword, and because he was on a very long road to his destination, I was wondering what adventures he would run into, and pulling a sword out of a stone to try and become a king would be a nice one. Of course, after he tried, the real king comes and pulls out the sword, and then he stands there kind of shy because that person saw him try, and he's very embarrassed about that fact. Crooked was another word I sort of struggled with, but after googling it and saw these trees that actually grew like that, I realized I would just let my pumpkin head sleep on one of these branches. This one was Screech, but personally I find it the worst one that I have. I have no idea how to portray that a gate makes a sound or that it opens, and this is probably my least favorite one of all, and I don't know, I'm not even sure how I would fix it, knowing what I know now. So yeah, it's just one that I don't want to see anymore. For gigantic, I decided to have a giant spider come out of his lair. This is another drawing that I don't really like. I made a lot of mistakes here during the inking process, and even just perspective is all wrong. The trees are all wrong. I am not happy with how this turned out. So of course, when little Mr. Pumpkinhead sees the giant spider, he starts running away from it. And I am also happy that my streak of bad days ran out here. I do love this one more than the previous two. While running away from the spider, his foot gets stuck behind a rock and he falls, shattering his poison bottle, and poison is released, but it doesn't really have the effect he thought it would. It turns out he made a storm potion and now a storm is raging through the forest. The next prompt word was teeming, and I had to Google that one as well, and I found something related to teeming with rain. So I decided to have him find shelter for the rain, and he feels kind of sad and despaired after all he's been through and still has not reached Pumpkin Fest. After his little cry, he is fierce and determined to get to Pumpkin Fest and gets back on the road. While walking through the forest, he comes by a mysterious restaurant and he decides to step in. The prompt word for this one was fat, and whenever I think of fat, I think of all the delicious cookies and cakes that I can eat. So I had my little Mr. Pumpkinhead feast on a delicious giant cake. The 17th prompt was graceful, and it was around this time that I realized that the entire challenge was starting to take its toll. I had made the sketches before Inktober started, so when I come across a sketch that I don't really like anymore, it was hard for me to stay motivated to actually ink it. I started to make a lot of mistakes when it comes to inking, especially paying attention to where the light source was coming from. I realized that I would always put the shadow on the same side of my Mr. Pumpkinhead, and that isn't always correct if you see where the light is coming from. I also started to question whether or not it was a good idea to not use any shading, so in this one I did use some hatching to create the illusion of depth. I told you in my Inktober preparation video that I was following the How to Ink course on SBS Learn. Since I applied for the monthly subscription, I also had access to the other courses, and I learned a lot about composition. While going through the Inktober sketches and finishing them, I realized I had made a lot of mistakes against certain principles that you should apply when you are doing backgrounds and composition. So that is definitely something I want to focus on more in the future. I want to try and continue creating stories with my art instead of just copying from a reference and adding some extra color or doing something special with it. And just as last year, I want to focus more on digital drawing and digital coloring. If I ever feel uninspired, I will probably go back to my Inktober pieces and try and color my favorite ones just as practice. Overall, I am really happy with how this challenge turned out. I realized that my Mr. Pumpkinhead changed a lot since the beginning of this challenge. I almost felt sad to let him go, but I hope that I will be able to do the Inktober challenge again next year, and who knows, maybe Mr. Pumpkinhead will be back then. We've reached the final 3 images that I made, and this is the first time that I incorporated a human character. Yet again, I had to realize that my drawing skills were falling short. I did not use a reference for this either. I looked at some pictures that I took of my own hands as a reference, but other than that, it was all from my mind. And that was it. So I would like to tell you a little more about my future plans and what you will be expecting in the upcoming months. The two main areas I want to focus on next are digital drawing and painting with acrylics. Thanks to the SPS courses, I've discovered the dry brushing technique, which you can use with acrylic. Both of these techniques will take up a lot of time, and I want to give you a heads up that it might be a while before I post the videos for this. I usually don't post work in progress, but if you want to follow what I am doing and how far along I am, you can always follow me on social media, Instagram and Facebook. You can find a link to these in the description below. If you are interested in the SPS courses, I will also post a link to these. I am not sponsored by SPS. This was solely out of pure interest, and I am very, very happy. The quality of these classes is extremely good and the information you are getting is amazing. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time.